Greetings, I'm Joe Hannan from Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm a commercial horticulture field specialist, primarily serving apple and grape growers across the state, but I also provide technical support for the FSMA produce safety rule. I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk about tools and technology on our farm. With having cell phones on us on a daily basis right now, and we've gotten to a point where we have interconnectivity between controllers, motors, servos, all sorts of hardware interfaced with software that's really getting to a point where it's well integrated with our cell phones, where things are becoming very much plug and play. It's really to a point where we can manage a lot of aspects on our farm simply via our cell phone. Irrigation controllers right now, I think, have come the farthest. We look at things like Rockio, Rainbird, Hunter, these three brands, but others as well, have really come to a point in the last couple of years where they offer a full package system that is very customizable, very easy to hook up and use. So I have the HydroWise system through Hunter right now on my personal farm. So this is the example that I'll show as I walk through really how you can take advantage of these new irrigation controllers that are connected through your cell phone for managing irrigation system on your farm. So on my farm, I have, in this demo, I have 6 different zones. So I have 1 vegetable, 2 raspberries, and 3 strawberries. And then I have 3 different crop codes or crops programmed into my irrigation controller. So I have vegetables, raspberries, and strawberries. And so what the crops designations for each of my irrigation zones, each of my 6 irrigation zones allow me to do, if I want to make a change to my strawberries, I don't have to go in and change the run. Say I want to add 20 minutes to the runtime on my strawberries. I don't have to go in and make that change in 3 different irrigation valves like you used to have to do on the old irrigation systems. I can go into the strawberry crop code and say, add an additional 20 minutes to my strawberries, and each of my 3 irrigation valves will run an additional 20 minutes, and I'll have to make that change in one place. Likewise, if I want to make a change to the entire 6 zones that I have for my irrigation system, I can simply go and tell the controller, make change in one place and add that 20 minutes across all 6 crops or all 6 irrigation zones. Or I can simply go in there and make the change just to one individual irrigation zone. So it allows me a lot of flexibility to make changes to the system, but have to do it in minimal number of places. I can make the change once across an entire crop, and rather than going in and doing it each of my 3 different places. So you also see on the screen that you can plug in, and I can see what my current weather conditions are at my farm. You can do that either via your nearest local weather station, or you can actually pay a little bit of extra fee and hook up or connect a weather station from your actual farm. So I could hook up the weather station that's on my farm and have that display through my irrigation interface. You also see that, again, with most irrigation system or irrigation controllers, you can have sensors hooked up. Here you'll see I have a flow meter hooked up, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in detail. So I have, again, 6 different irrigation zones hooked up to my controller, and I have a flow meter hooked up to my system as one of my sensors. So again, I work a full-time job and I'm farming full-time, and so I want to be able to check to make sure that my irrigation controller is running properly and is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So take an example from 2019 when I first got my irrigation controller all hooked up. I then had to leave the next morning to go to Wisconsin for a couple of days and didn't really have verification that everything was 100% working the way it was supposed to. So I'm going down the road, 10 o'clock, I take a break, I look at my irrigation controller app on my cell phone to see if things have been running. Look at the software, it's saying, yep, the pump's turned on and running, the valves are running, water's flowing through the flow meter, so everything looks like it should be working well. I pull over at noon to grab a sandwich and take a quick break, look at it and say, oh, the irrigation controller is running, the pump is running, but water isn't flowing through my flow meter. So I suspect I have an issue going on somewhere between the flow meter and the pump, that I have a leak somewhere or a blowout somewhere. Sure enough, when I got home and had my wife look at the irrigation system, this is what I found. I didn't have my hose clamp on the tight enough on from the pump going to my irrigation manifold, and I had a blowout, and I was pumping water out into my yard rather than going out to my field. So, but I knew I had a problem because the pump was saying it was turning on, but water wasn't flowing through the flow meter. Likewise, if I would have a blowout or a leak downstream from the flow meter, I would be reading that I had a much higher flow rate through my flow meter than what would be normal. And so if I saw suddenly that my water was going through my flow meter at a much higher rate than on my normal daily basis, I'd know that I'd have a blowout down the line somewhere. Now, the flow meter doesn't take away the fact that you still have to get out there and check and make sure your irrigation nozzles aren't plugged. You still have to make sure that water's flowing through your system and things like that. So you still need to get out there and look at it, but it gives you an extra little bit of security to know that, hey, if I'm away from home for a day or two, I can check in and see if things appear to be running normally. So in this case, I saved myself losing some plants by being able to ask my wife to go out and fix the system or check on it when she got home from work. So you can also hook up rain sensors, soil moisture sensors, wind sensors, or wind speed anemometers. All these different sensors can be plugged into your irrigation controller. The flow meter that I have hooked up to my system, that's not a normal sensor that most irrigation controllers support. And so one of the reasons why I chose the HydroWise system from Hunter was because that they support a digitally connected flow meter. So most of your irrigation controllers will be able to control one sensor. Some of them will be able to control two sensors, but that's generally the limit. You're not able to hook up more than two sensors on your irrigation controller. So you really have to look at what sensor do you want on your irrigation system and what controls do you want. If you're running a system where it's all drip irrigation, having a rain sensor or having a wind sensor really doesn't provide any value. If you're irrigating all in high tunnels, having a rain sensor really doesn't provide a lot of value for you there. So you have to look at what these sensors are and whether they're going to provide any value for your specific situation. So to get into more of the advanced features with the irrigation controllers, these controllers now, with being able to digitally program them, allow you a lot of flexibility. So in the example that I have here, you can set up your irrigation controller to manage multiple irrigation sources. So I have my irrigation controller hooked up to irrigate field 1 and field 2 just out of my basic home farm well, which is an always-on system hooked up to a hydrant. So open up the valve, the system observes a change in pressure on your irrigation system, and it kicks on the pump automatically. Again, that's very standard home well farm systems when we're pumped into a farm hydrant. But I can also set it up where my controller is also controlling water and a pump out of a rainwater catchment system. So I have my controller going to a master pump switch or pump relay, which turns on the pump out of the rain barrel, and I can irrigate fields 3 and 4 out of that rain barrel setup. So my controller can control a well setup, and it can also control a rain barrel setup, or maybe instead of a rain barrel, it's coming out of a pond or lake or something like that. But I can have multiple different sources of water supply going out to my different fields simply by saying field 2 and field 3 in the programming, those are connected to my pump start relay. Fields 1 and 2, those are not connected to my pump start relay. It allows me a lot of flexibility there to, again, have one irrigation controller for my entire farm that I can see and manage from my cell phone. The one caveat here is with your irrigation controller setup, let's put it this way, you're still only limited to running one valve at a time until you get up into that commercial range. So until you start spending $450, $500 on an irrigation controller, you're looking at one zone of operation at a time, which generally isn't an issue for us on fruits and vegetable farms. So diving into the advanced features even more, you can manage or set the irrigation system up to be managed through predictive watering adjustments. Basically, what is the forecast for the day, and then make adjustments to the irrigation system that way. So all of this is customizable. So don't water when today's forecast is less than 30 or whatever I want that temperature to be. I can adjust that temperature and the irrigation system won't run if it's colder than that. Or I can say, oh, well, when it's more than, I got 65 in the box here, but when it's more than 75, 85, 95, whatever I want it to be, add an additional 10, 20, 30%, whatever additional water volume I want to put out to the field, just can automatically increase my runtime. And that's really handy because in Iowa, we might go and we might have 3 or 4 days of 85 to 95 degrees, but then temperatures could cool back down to 70, 75. And so if you're going out there and manually increasing and decreasing your irrigation run times all the time, you can set that up and program it into the irrigation controller and just have that automatically adjust based on what the forecast is going to be. You can even say, well, if the forecast is 100% chance of rain, don't irrigate today. Wait for the rain to actually show up. I caution against that because, again, in Iowa, we can have 100% forecast of rain, but if we're in a drought period, we still may go 3 or 4 days where we don't actually get anything. And then, by day 2 or day 3, when you're supposed to have an irrigation cycle having run, you might start losing some crop quality. You might start seeing melons or tomatoes starting to crack when you finally do run your irrigation system. So I don't recommend using that particular feature, but it is available out there. If you are on irrigating on an overhead sprinkler system, you could again say, rather than having a anemometer control and shut down your system, you could simply say, look at the forecast. If the wind is predicted to be over 19 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, whatever you want it to be, again, that's adjustable, you can have it automatically shut down. So forecast, you always run some risk when you're programming based on forecast. So if you're doing things like adjusting based on temperature, sure, you can do that on forecast, but I'd be cautious with using the other functions. If you have an actual personal weather station hooked up on your farm, you can also set your irrigation controller to adjust your run times based on what the conditions are in your field. So here you can set it up to say, well, in the last 24 hours, if I've gotten rainfall, don't run. And I can set that rainfall at 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 2 inch, whatever I want there to be. Or you can have it look at a longer length of time. If I've got rainfall, in this case, over the last 7 days, I can set that, if I've got 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches of rain, again, customizable, you can adjust that and set that irrigation controller to say, okay, don't irrigate because we've gotten X number of inches over the last X number of days. So again, a lot of flexibility there for you to take advantage of. Maybe not super useful in a high tunnel situation, but definitely in the field situation, you want to take advantage of it. So if you haven't started taking a look at the irrigation controllers that are connected or connectable to your cell phone, I really suggest taking a look at them. Just from simply programming and setting them up, they're a lot easier to manage and set up than the old programmers or the old irrigation controllers that just were buttons on an interface or dials on an interface. So they're really getting to a point where they're very cost effective, they're economical, and just from personal use, I love being able to get out there and just manage my irrigation system from my cell phone. If for nothing else, when I'm out there scouting for insects and diseases and I see it that, oh, I need to irrigate, I can jump on my cell phone app, turn it on, and away we go. I don't have to worry about walking out of the field to do it. So again, I'm Joe Hannan from Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. Hopefully you'll be taking a look at irrigation controllers and the interconnectedness with cell phones here soon. Thanks for listening today.